Hi, it is Jo, the crafty crofter here, and today I've got a bit of a different style video for you. I thought I'd show you some of my recent purchases, especially after we've just talked about batch cutting and where you store your fabric and that kind of thing. I've been to a couple of events, so I've got some special things that I was on the lookout for and a few things that I saw that really took my fancy, and I also had a few more notions and bits towards my Capella coat, so I'll give you a little update on that. First of all, I'm going to show you what I'm wearing. So this is the carnation blouse from Fabric Godmother. I need to show you quite close up. So it's a little grandad collar, and then it's got an asymmetrical frill that ends halfway down the button placket, and then the other side of the collar is frilled at the top but not around the curved edge. And this fabric and pattern was on my wish list when I went to the Stitch Festival in London in March. My daughter and I went for a weekend in London. We had a great time. We went to the William Morris Gallery, we went to the Stitch Festival, we booked a workshop. My daughter's doing textiles A-level in September, so I was trying to fire her up for some really interesting stuff. I'd never sewn a Fabric Godmother pattern before, but I'd seen a friend of mine at the social that I go to, and she had made one in a sort of viscose that had come in a subscription box from them, and I really loved it because I love this sort of ruffle style. So I bought the pattern at the Stitch Festival, and then I had a look around for some fabric, and if I bought some it was great, and if I didn't I would look somewhere else. But I found this cobalt blue eyelet fabric, so like a really high gauge embroidered anglaise. It's got quite big holes in it. After I bought it, I was walking around the show, and the whole time I was thinking, how am I going to put interfacing in the collar because the holes are really big. And so I went for a coffee, and I found that the fabric had a really big selvage of unembroidered parts, so I've used every scrap of that. So I used it to make the frill, because if I cut that frill in the embroidered fabric with holes in, it might have looked like a mouse had nibbled along the edge. So I used a little bit of the plain fabric there. I used the plain fabric for the button band, and then I interlined the collar. So inside the collar, I took a little photo, there is the collar outer, a blue piece with interfacing on, and then my inner collar is just a plain blue piece. So the interfacing is right on the inside, and it didn't turn out too thick or bulky, and I layered out the seam. So if you're using an eyelet fabric or an embroidered anglaise, then that's a little tip for you. If you've got a different colour, like white, you can get away with, you can put white interfacing behind a white one and you don't really see it. But with blue, I either have a black or a white interfacing, so I just interline that, which is where you just sew exactly the same piece of fabric on within the seam allowance, and then you build it as normal, and you've got a little barrier behind. So this was my first fabric purchase from Stitch Festival and my pattern. My daughter has wanted for ages pink gingham elasticated summer trousers, and she found a really nice seersucker, and she really liked that it was a dusky pink. She said you never see that dusky pink in gingham, it's always baby pink. So she had that. So I bought 2 pieces of fabric at the Stitch Festival. Other lovely things that I bought were this piece of cord, and it's on the back of a vinyl, and I'm going to use this to make the base of a handbag. It's a really great handbag pattern, which I will show you in a sort of bags episode. My mum has one, I have one with pleather on the bottom, but I just thought this might make a nice summery version. So it's only £3. It's just enough to put the bottom on the bag, so I thought that's really worth it for something a little bit different that I wouldn't know where to go and search for elsewhere. The rest of my purchases were very modest, but I bought lots of small things that if I came home and had to search for them, I would have had to have paid postage on top. So I got some glue refills for my temporary glue pen, and I use my temporary glue pen all of the time, especially when I'm video sewing, because once I get it in position and I've got the camera on it, I don't want to pull a pin out and then drag it out of position again. So I use a temporary glue stick a lot, and those are the refills, so I'll show you that another time if you've not heard of that before. I've got my sashiko template, of course, that I've used on my Capella coat, and that was £3. I bought some new blades for my rotary cutter because I'd been cutting out this quilted fabric and had dulled quite a few blades, and I'd also been doing a silk video for Manurva, so I'd used quite a lot of my blades for that. I bought some labels. I'm a bit picky about labels, I don't know why. Maybe it's because I don't spend so much money on fabric. I like to buy a nice label. I don't like the ones that say made with love, because my things aren't always made with love. Sometimes they're made for the money, sometimes they're made because someone else has asked me to, and sometimes they're made with a lot of swear words. So I quite like to find an unusual one. This one says, applause please, handmade and smashing it. So they're a sort of ego label for me. I quite like those. I bought a pack of those. And the last thing I bought were some bag notions. So once I'd bought the cork and I thought, oh, that would make a lovely new handbag for summer, I had the handbag on that I wanted to repeat. So it was really good because then when I got to the store where all the bag bits were, I could sort of measure them up and make sure that I got all the right size things. So I've got this swivel, and I use a squaring on that one, a D-ring and a slider, and I could make sure it was really easy to pick up all the same colour, because if you're doing an antique brass one, you have to go on a website sometimes and try and find all the right colours that all match. So this to me seemed like a really good in-shopping experience to pick all the ones that I wanted, the right size and the right colour, all to complete one handbag. Now with this, all I need is a little bit of scrap fabric and I can make another bag. So that's what I bought from the Stitch Festival in London. I'd never been before. I really enjoyed it. I went on the Sunday, so it wasn't too busy. You could really shop without having like 4 deep in front of fabric stalls and stands and things. You could talk to the vendors a little bit more because they weren't so busy. And me and my daughter did a workshop in the morning, and we went to a little hand embroidery and mixed media workshop. We learnt a bullion stitch, which was great. My daughter's a really good embroiderer. And we came away with a lovely little sample, and we just had an hour where we had time to sit down and sort of collect ourselves before we went back to the show. I'd be really interested to know if there's a show or an event by you that you really like to go to, especially worldwide, because I don't know many of those. And also if you're in a different part of the UK, tell us what your local show is. I've got a little bit of a Capella coat update. So my bits of binding came for binding the seams. If you're interested to know how to bind seams on a reversible jacket, I can do a little demo for you if you want to when I get to that bit of the coat. I got another roll of the denim thread, which I'm using to quilt the layers together, and I used 100 meters already, so I'm on to the next one. I got a navy cord that's going to go through the drawstring in the hood. I got some buttons, and I'm really pleased with the colour of them. Blue for the one side and pink for the other side. I just don't know if they're big enough for a coat. I might have to look at that, but I do know that they're the right colour, so if they come in a different size, I can just size up. So because the binding arrived, then I was able to bind the pockets. So here I sewed it on with the machine on the right side, turned it to the wrong side and hand stitched on the inside. I didn't have to do really neat tiny hand stitching because then I'm going to sew it on the machine. So this was just to hold everything stable and in the correct place. On the other side I used a navy binding, and I'm going to use some of that binding in other parts of the jacket, like around the cuffs, and that's the Sashiko template in action. And this is one that's finished. So I've sewn my pockets on differently, and I'll show you how I did that maybe in another video. Instead of having them top opening, which is really frustrating, I've made them as a hand warmer pocket, but it doesn't change the overall look or aesthetic of the coat from the picture that I liked when I first bought it. So that one is like that, and on this side like that. If you want to know how to do double pockets to reverse your jacket, I can show you that too if you'd like to know. The other little bit I could move on with my Capella coat was to put the hood together. So on this one, this side is just smooth hood, the raw edges are on the other side, and on the printed side I've done a flat binding. This has a drawstring round here in a casing, and then that joins onto the neck. I don't know if this hood's going to be a bit big. Do you think it's a bit big? It's quite big, doesn't it? Anyway, something to look at another time. So that's the progress on my Capella coat. I was waiting for all of this to come to continue. And then a couple of weekends ago, I worked at the Manurva roll end sale, and twice a year, they've only started doing it in the last couple of years, they've been having a remnant sale where they put out all of the last bits off the end of a roll, fabrics that are dead stock and aren't on the website anymore, although pretty much everything is on there, but there were sort of pieces. So all of that fabric goes into a dead stock sale or a roll end remnant sale, and then they opened their offices upstairs and they created a really beautiful boutique with fabrics that you could have cut by the metre. So if rummaging and looking through odd pieces wasn't for you, you could go upstairs for a slightly different experience where there was haberdashery and patterns, and you could walk around and choose different fabrics. All of my friends said, how do you stand there for 2 days talking to people and not want all of the fabrics? And they're kind of right. I do take the odd piece out and I put it in a basket, and then I kind of keep it in an office under the desk. And as the weekend goes on, if I see something, I'd pop it in the basket. When at the first one, I did buy quite a lot of fabric because I thought it was a one-off remnant sale. But then when I realised that it was a sale that would be twice a year, then I was able to think, what would I like to sew between now and autumn? Or in the autumn, I was like, what would I like to sew between now and spring? So I could definitely quantify what I wanted and what I needed rather than just wanting everything. So I'll show you what I found. There is downstairs all the remnants, and then in the middle is this really long table, and it's everything on it is £1 because those remnants are less than a metre. So it's not for everybody, because if you need a larger size, you wouldn't necessarily be able to cut anything out of a metre. For me, I can cut things out of a metre. If you colour block, it was great. If you patchworked, it was great. If you wanted to just make camisoles and vests and things for summer, it was really good. If you want to make children's clothes, it was good. There was some people with like baskets of all children's prints. So it depends what you were after. But when I was helping to put the fabric out on the Friday, on the top of a pile, I saw this. And you think, oh, lovely gingham blue, it's really nice. But I knew even more about it just by seeing the top, because I thought, I wonder if that's the Atelier Brunette double-sided gingham. And it was. So on this side is this size gingham, and on this size is this. So this is a double gauze, and the reason I wanted it is because I've used it before and I really liked it. I made the Manurva poppy dress with it, but I just made the top half only and made a blouse, and I used the fabric in the 2 different ways on the button band. I really enjoyed playing around with it. So this is just under a metre. So I've got to think what I'm going to make with it, but I think I've already got an idea. I'm quite short. I'm probably 5'3", so I'm going to fold it in half, sew it down one side, and I'm going to shear the top quite deep, probably like that much. I'm going to make a summer skirt that will take it down to my ankle. I think that's really great, and that was £1. If I'm honest, I didn't know what I was going to make with that, but I knew that 1 metre had made my previous blouse, so I picked that up knowing that it could be a skirt, it could be a top, or it could be pyjama bottoms worn with a white t-shirt. So I had lots of options for it, which is why I put it in my basket. Other things that might happen on the £1 table is there's more than one piece. So if Manurva have had returns, for example, and there's a piece cut off that's already cut to a particular length, then that would go into the remnants. So this is a piece of cotton jersey. It's got a lovely stretch, really thick, lovely quality. The background is a minty green, and then it's got a dark olive green on top. I saw this piece and I thought, wow, I'm going to have that because I can make a t-shirt out of it. And then by chance, I saw another one. So I've got 2 pieces there. I might go for a long sleeve t-shirt to wear under my hand knits in the winter, because I quite often use wool and it can be a bit itchy on my arms. And the other one I might use for the Saybrook vest. So that's on my Make 9 grid. I made it last year. I really loved it. It was a really nice summer vest, and I've only got 1 blue one, so it would be quite nice to have some, which was my toile really. And then it'd be nice to have one in some summer pastel colours. So I've got 2 t-shirts and a skirt. I had a little offcut of tubular rib because it was blue, and quite often I wear blue or green wear lots of colours really. I don't really have a colour palette, but I knew that this piece of blue tubing would be ideal for cuffs on a sweatshirt, so I put that in my basket. That was £1. I had a piece of art gallery jersey. You know what this is for? That's for cutting knickers, so that's £1. Probably get like 3 or 4 pairs out of that. Actually, I can put that away straight away because that goes in there. This is a strange one. It is a £1 piece of soft crepe. It's got a little sheen to it. Look, see the shine? This is to fix a prom dress. My daughter had bought a black sort of wide shouldered bias cut dress, and she had to buy it quite big for her bust measurement, but she's actually really slim in proportion to that. So the bottom of her slip dress is all baggy and loose because it's hanging from her bust apex. So she said, Mum, can you put a tie on it? So I'm just going to unpick a little bit of the sides, create 2 really nice thin spaghetti ties, and then she can tie it at the back, and then she can get the silhouette that she wants. So to fix that problem, I've got £1 of black slinky crepe. My next one was a super find. It was on the pound table, and it's a piece of Liberty silk, and I've had one of these from there before, and when I got it home and I started to treat it too precious really, because it is precious fabric if you've paid full price for it. But I'd had this £1 end of roll piece, and it ended up being one of those ones where I didn't use it because it was so special, even though it was £1. Anyway, what happened with it was I used it as a lining in a jacket, and it was fantastic because then I'm looking at it all the time. I was going to make a camisole, but then that would be under things. I was going to make a vest top, but I thought I'm sort of gardening or walking the dog or feeding the chickens or whatever. When am I going to wear a silk vest top? So putting it inside a jacket was a real winner decision because I can see it all the time. Some people see just a little flap of the inside, so it's a really nice way to use it. So I've got another piece that will cut the fronts of a jacket and the back of a jacket, and I can make the sleeves a different colour on the inside. I'm not up for making a jacket at the moment because I've already got my Capella one on the go, but for £1 this can stay in my stash bucket. I might put it in one of my lingerie boxes so that it just doesn't get churned up in the bottom of the big crate. But I was really pleased with this find because I know that that will make a coat lining. I've been really leaning towards some quite jewel tones of late. So I saw this art gallery poplin. I've used this print before in a pale sort of duck egg blue, and I made the Bonnie top from Style Arc, which is my go-to top for if I want to use up a small piece of fabric, but we'll talk about some of my favourite patterns for that in another video. This one was £1 and I knew I would like it, and it's big enough to make a summer top. Next up, my pieces weren't off the pound, so all of that was off the pound table, but this was a remnant piece, and when you picked up a remnant piece it had a tag on it that just said how long it was. It didn't tell you what it was, it didn't tell you the composition of it. You had to sort of use your knowledge. If you wanted to know what fibre it was, you wouldn't be able to tell. And that was sort of my job for the weekend. People were bringing me fabric and asking me what it was. So I picked up this rib jersey. If it's not all cotton, it's got a high cotton content. It's got a really matte finish. It's got a high stretch percentage, so it's going to be cotton, elastane, maybe a little bit of polyester, but it doesn't feel polyestery. I've used and seen polyester rib before. This was a really nice big piece, and I have recently bought the Bryn cardigan from True Bias. I made one for my daughter at Easter. She took it back to university, a sort of slim black cardigan. I want that, I think, and I'd quite like to maybe try and make a twin set, so maybe the vest and the cardigan in this colour so that I can wear it with a skirt. Or I'm just going to try and get as many things from the Bryn cardigan pattern as I can, because there's a sleeveless top, a short sleeve top, cropped. There's a really big long cardigan, and that's not for me, but I quite like all of the things that are sort of waist and hip above. So for £8 I've got a piece of fabric that it's not too precious, and I can really have a go at the Bryn cardigan and keep trying to get the fit how I want. I found the button band quite difficult on it because it was really small, and then the layers of the rib that I'd used on the previous one seemed a bit thick. I think I need to maybe layer that out a little bit, but I've got some fabric to practice. I had some bags of buttons from some of the little rummagey boxes. I had some labels in a little bag that were out of a split packet. The final thing I bought was a wish list thing. So I would like to make a pair of Carolyn pyjamas. I've made 6 or 7 pairs of Carolyn pyjamas since I had the pattern. Maybe do a whole video on that, I think, because it's a really interesting pattern to look at. But it is a bit of a fabric pig if you want to make all of the cuffs and everything with the piping. And you know, fabric can be expensive. It can be, you know, as expensive as you want really, but when you make something like the Carolyn pyjamas, you need like 3 or 4 meters of fabric, and if you're not careful, you end up spending 50 quid on a pair of pyjamas. So this was the fabric I was really on the lookout for the sale. So I was looking for a floral, anything, wasn't really fussed. I just sort of looked on a top shelf at some of the Rose and Hubble remnant pieces, and I saw this one. Just thought it was pretty. It's for wearing it in bed at night time. It's got a bit of a kind of 1990s Laura Ashley vibe. And this piece was 3.5 meters long. So it didn't cost me very much. Again, it was £4 a metre, £13. And so that's a kind of decent amount to spend on a pair of pyjamas rather than 50, 60. I once priced up some fabric for those Carolyn pyjamas and it came to like £94. And I was like, I can't do that. So this was especially on my list for the sale. Okay, that's what I bought, and it sounds a lot, but I had this fabric, these notions, and this cork. Okay, I've shared what I've used my fabric fund for. Is there anything that you're really coveting or you're keeping an eye on? That's something I do a lot. I keep an eye on something for a while. I don't want to be the first person to buy it and find all the problems. I like to just go around, say, oh, what did you do with it? Oh, what did you do with it? Oh, I like the way you did that. And that's how I make my purchases, just by checking out what everyone else has been doing. Tell us what you're making, tell us what you've bought, and join in with our sewing community. If you are looking to buy anything from Manurva, you can use my affiliate code. It's StarsJo, and I've put it down here. It's capital letters. You get 10% off, and I get a little commission. And if you want to use it, you're really welcome to, no pressure. Next episode, we'll take a look at something a little bit different. I don't want to show you my shopping all of the time, but I just had 2 really nice events to talk about there and some different things to share. See you next time.